Anne's eyes slowly fluttered open to the harsh flashes of sunlight that pierced through the thin curtains of her dorm room. The room was a chaotic scene, with girls running frantically around, creating a whirlwind of motion that clashed with the stillness of her groggy awakening. As Anne struggled to orient herself, the muffled sounds of cries and urgent whispers filled the air, creating a disconcerting symphony. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of the commotion. Why were her fellow roommates in such a frenzy? In the midst of the chaos, Anne's gaze landed on Lily, her roommate, who was on the other side of the room. Lily's eyes widened with a mix of urgency and concern as she gestured frantically for Anne to get dressed. The urgency in Lily's movements hinted at the gravity of the situation, and Anne's confusion deepened. The cold floor beneath her feet provided a sharp contrast to the warmth of her bed, and Anne quickly realized that time was of the essence. With a sense of urgency fueled by the atmosphere around her, she fumbled to find her clothes, hastily pulling them on. Lily's voice cut through the chaos, calling out to Anne over the din, "Hurry up! We need to go downstairs. The professors are wanting to speak with us." The urgency in Lily's tone spurred Anne into quicker action as she stumbled to her feet, still trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. As Anne made her way towards Lily, she caught glimpses of other girls in various states of disarray, some still in their pajamas, others frantically searching for belongings. The sense of urgency intensified with each step, and Anne's mind raced to grasp the unfolding situation. Downstairs awaited a mystery that Anne was yet to unravel, but the urgency in Lily's gestures and the clamor around her painted a vivid picture of the need for swift action. With a mixture of confusion and determination, Anne followed Lily's lead, descending the stairs into the heart of the unknown chaos that awaited them. As Anne and Lily descended the long, winding spiral staircase inside the girls' dormitory, each step seemed to echo with the drumming beats of Anne's heart. Anxiety grew inside her chest, and a whirlwind of emotions spun within her. The urgency of the situation, combined with the unknown nature of what awaited them downstairs, intensified the kaleidoscope of feelings. Confusion clouded Anne's mind like a thick fog, making it difficult to focus on Lily's words. As Lily spoke, her voice seemed distant, muffled by the cacophony of thoughts echoing in Anne's head. Anne's eyes darted around, trying to make sense of the hurried footsteps and hushed conversations that filled the stairwell. Fear crept in as Anne's imagination painted vivid scenarios of what might be happening downstairs. What could have caused such a chaotic disturbance in the usual tranquil academy? Her stomach churned with unease, and a sense of vulnerability gripped her as she descended further into the unknown. A flicker of frustration danced in Anne's eyes, her mind racing to connect the dots of this unexpected puzzle. Why were they rushing downstairs? What awaited them at the bottom of the staircase? The unknown variables fueled a sense of unease, and Anne's thoughts raced like a wildfire. Yet, a thread of determination wove through Anne's emotions. Despite the confusion and fear, a stubborn resolve bubbled within her. She clenched her jaw, determined to face whatever awaited them with courage. Lily's continued attempts to communicate were met with absent nods from Anne, who was lost in her own turbulent sea of emotions. As the staircase unraveled before them, the gravity of the situation loomed larger. Anne's mind oscillated between panic and a quiet determination to confront the unknown. Each step down felt like a commitment, a descent into a world where normalcy had been disrupted and the rules had changed. The muffled voices around her continued to blend into a dissonant background, and Anne's internal monologue drowned out external stimuli. The journey down the staircase mirrored the descent into the depths of Anne's emotions, where uncertainty and anticipation mingled in a complex dance. At the bottom of the staircase, a new chapter awaited, and Anne steeled herself for whatever revelations or challenges lay ahead. The academy, once a haven of routine and familiarity, had transformed into an enigma, and Anne, propelled by a mix of emotions, braced herself for the unfolding mystery that awaited them on the lower floor. Amidst the chaos of the academy's downstairs lobby, Anne and Lily collided with Riley and Ethan, the urgency of the situation etched on their faces. The lobby was a tumultuous sea of students, each whispering speculations and theories about the mysterious disappearance of the headmistress. All around them seemed dense with tension, and the room buzzed with the nervous energy of uncertainty. Riley's firm grip on Anne's arm and Ethan's hand steadying Lily cut through the pandemonium, creating a temporary bubble of solidarity within the turmoil. As the four friends navigated the crowded space, the bustle of students carried them forward, pushing them like leaves caught in a swift current. "Anne, Lily, do you know what's actually happened?" Riley's voice carried a mix of concern and confusion as he tried to make sense of the chaos surrounding them. Ethan's eyes met Anne's, and a silent understanding passed between them. "Are they actually accusing us of using forbidden magic that made the headmistress disappear?" he explained, his tone tinged with disbelief. Riley looks over to Ethan and folds his arms, looking displeased. "Well, you told me it was risky, and it didn't seem like we really knew what we were doing. Are you certain it wasn't us who caused this?" Ethan shook his head. "There's no way in a million years this was done by us. What we experienced last night, that's who or what took the headmistress. I know it." Anne and Lily, both listening in on a conversation that was only half making sense to them, made them feel confused and concerned. Anne especially didn't like where this was heading. As the crowd surged around them, carrying the group like driftwood caught in a river's current. Voices of other students reached their ears, each contributing to the growing pool of rumors and speculations. Whispers of curses, forbidden rituals, and sinister plots intertwined with the rapid footsteps and hushed conversations. Ethan leaned closer, his words barely audible above the ambient noise. "People are saying the headmistress is trapped in another dimension. Others think she's been kidnapped. The rumors are spreading like wildfire." Riley's grip tightened on Anne's arm, a protective instinct kicking in. "We can't let these rumors define the narrative. We need to find out what really happened and clear our names." As they hurried through the lobby, Anne, Lily, Riley, and Ethan exchanged glances, silently vowing to unravel the truth amidst the chaos that had engulfed the academy. The uncertain path ahead loomed like a daunting labyrinth, but together they were determined to navigate it, challenge the accusations, and uncover the hidden threads that connected the mysterious disappearance of the headmistress to the web of rumors spun by the anxious students around them. The grand hall echoed with whispers as students were ushered in, the air heavy with anticipation. The professors stood at the front, their expressions stern, and the atmosphere charged with a sense of impending revelation. As the last of the students settled into the cavernous hall, a hush fell over the room, and one of the professors stepped forward. "Attention, students!" The professor's voice resonated through the grand hall. "I'm sure you are all aware of the recent events concerning the headmistress. We regret to inform you that she has disappeared under mysterious circumstances." An audible gasp rippled through the crowd, and anxious glances were exchanged between students. The professor continued, "We suspect that forbidden magic was used in her office last night. While we won't mention names at this time, we want you to be aware that such actions are strictly prohibited within the academy." Riley and Ethan exchanged uneasy glances, their secrets now cast in the spotlight. The professor's voice carried a somber tone as they delved into the potential dangers of the forbidden magic that had lingered in the headmistress's office. "As of now," the professor declared, "we won't assume malicious intent, but we cannot ignore the potential dangers that come with such actions. Once the individuals responsible are identified, they will face consequences. We are here to ensure your safety and the integrity of this academy." Riley's frustration simmered beneath the surface as the professor's words washed over the hall. When the professor mentioned the consequences, Ethan's gaze dropped, guilt etched on his face. As the professors dismissed the students, Riley seized the opportunity to confront Ethan. "What the hell were you thinking, Ethan?" Riley's voice was laced with anger as he pulled him aside in the crowded hall. "I really think we did it this time. I know we were in this mess together, but why would you think we wouldn't be caught? These are the best wizards the Academy has ever had." Ethan's eyes met Riley's, a mix of regret and defense in his gaze. "Riley, I would completely understand if you didn't want to be friends now. However, in my defense, you didn't seem to be too worried when I talked about doing it." Riley shook his head, the anger in his eyes intensifying. "This isn't a joke, Ethan. We're in serious trouble now, and you need to take responsibility for me. We have to own up to that spell." Ethan stammered to explain, but Riley cut him off. "I can't believe you dragged me into this. I can't be associated with someone who allows their friends to get buried like that. Sorry, Ethan. I think we're done." With that, Riley turned away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the sea of students. The pain of telling his only true friend the truth stamped across his face. Riley moved through the crowd, searching for Anne and Lily, determined to distance himself from the consequences of a misguided decision made by someone he once considered a friend. Ethan stormed out of the grand hall, his footsteps heavy with the weight of regret. The lobby just outside became his refuge, a space where the chaos of accusations and consequences couldn't reach him. The dull echo of students inside created a dissonant backdrop to his turbulent thoughts. Well, if he didn't want to do it, he could have just said that to me. There's no need to cut off a friendship over something so small. He was happy to do it. I'm sure I asked him if he wanted to do it. He muttered to himself, the words escaping his lips like a desperate plea for understanding. He paced the lobby, wrestling with the repercussions of his impulsive actions, each step echoing his internal turmoil. As he tried to defend himself internally, the reality of the situation sank in. "I know I asked him if he was up for it and he agreed, or hell, maybe I didn't. I can't even remember now," he insisted, attempting to rationalize the forbidden magic as harmless. But the consequences now loomed large, casting a shadow over his feeble justifications. A surge of frustration coursed through him, and he kicked a nearby object in the lobby, sending it clattering across the floor. The sound reverberated through the empty space, a tangible expression of his own disgust at the choices he had made. While a few students looked his way and tutted, Ethan felt slightly embarrassed. Sorry. I'm having a bad day." Seeking solace, he collapsed onto a bench, his knees drawn up to his face. With a large sigh, he rested his head on his knees, grappling with the mess he had created. The vines that crept the walls seemed to respond to his distress, their delicate leaves extending towards him. As if offering a gesture of comfort, the vines gently wiped away Ethan's tears of frustration with their soft leaves. It was a small act of solace from the natural elements that surrounded the academy, a reminder that even in the midst of self-inflicted chaos, there was still a connection to the kindness of the natural world. Ethan's internal battle continued, the weight of guilt and the reality of the situation crashing down on him. Has he truly lost his friend for good? The lobby, once a passageway of bustling activity, now bore witness to his silent struggle, a canvas for the emotional storm that raged within. Back inside the grand hall, underneath the soft light from the lathe-stained glass windows, Anne and Lily were engaged in conversation with a few students when Riley approached them, the thoughts racing through his mind. What if they knew he was involved? In that moment they exchanged glances. The space around them thickened with tension. Just then, Nella, the arrogant bully with her entourage in tow, weaved through the crowd, knocking Riley off his feet, cutting him off before he could reach his sister. Are you actually stupid, or just blind, to how utterly ridiculous your actions have been? Nella's voice dripped with arrogance as she confronted Riley, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against her arm. Riley took a deep breath, bracing himself for the confrontation. "I don't know anything more than you do," he replied, his tone measured but firm. "Names haven't been mentioned, so it could be anyone." Nella scoffed, her dismissive attitude cutting through the air. "Oh, please. We all know you and your friend Ethan are capable of something like this. Trying to seize control, perhaps?" Lily stepped forward, her expression defiant. "Names haven't been mentioned for a reason. Jumping to conclusions won't help anyone. We should focus on finding out the truth rather than accusing without evidence." Nella turns towards Lily, shooting her down with a simple look that crushed Lily's spirit, and with a small gesture of her hand, the group closed in around her, and Anne, their attention now fixed on them both, as Lily feels completely suffocated by them. Anne, feeling the situation is getting out of control, interjected, "It could be anyone, even someone like you, Nella. We don't know what happened, and pointing fingers could get you in trouble." Nella's eyes narrowed towards Anne, a flash of rage crossing her face. Just as her anger reached its peak, Riley decided to speak up, realizing the importance of setting the record straight. "Look, Nella, if you must know," Riley confessed, drawing the attention of those around them. "Ethan and I did use forbidden magic that night, but it wasn't to harm anyone. It was stupid, of course, and yes, maybe it could have gone horribly wrong. It was Ethan's idea, but I did approve it. We are to blame in a way, but the magic that captured Headmistress Althalia, that wasn't anything to do with us. We just tried to put a message across to her, to warn her about something, that was all. It worked, I think." The revelation hung in the air, a collective gasp sweeping through the small crowd. Riley continued, explaining the events leading up to the disappearance of the headmistress, laying bare the truth of their misguided actions. As Riley spoke, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and understanding rippled through the onlookers. The grand hall, once a place of shared routines and familiar faces, now bore witness to the unraveling of secrets and the complexities that bound the academy in a web of unforeseen consequences. Nella, with her arrogant demeanor, seized the opportunity to unleash a barrage of cutting remarks aiming to hurt Riley. She hurled insults and accusations, her words designed to wound and provoke a reaction. Yet, as Nella's words echoed through the hall, Riley stood his ground, his expression stoic, his ears seemingly immune to her verbal assault. In a moment of unexpected vulnerability, Riley's response caught Nella off guard. Instead of retaliating, he simply nodded, acknowledging her words. "You're right, Nella," he admitted, his voice carrying a hint of resignation. "I've made mistakes, and I have a lot to learn." The admission hung in the air, leaving a pregnant pause as the weight of Riley's self-awareness sank in. For a brief moment, the atmosphere shifted. Nella, who had revealed the power of her words, found herself faced with an unexpected twist. Riley's vulnerability had disarmed her, revealing a side she hadn't anticipated. Emotions flickered across Nella's face, a fleeting glimpse of uncertainty, a hint of empathy, and perhaps even a twinge of guilt. The walls she had built around herself seemed to waver momentarily as Riley's admission struck a chord within her, resonating with the complexities of human flaws. The words, laced with venom, echoed in the space, but her entourage continued to distance themselves, driven by the realization that Nella's negativity and cruelty had become a burden too heavy to bear. The unsettling nature of her usual behavior had become a weakness, repelling even those who once stood by her side. Left alone in the aftermath, Nella seethed with frustration, her shoulders tensed with the weight of the isolation she had brought upon herself. The grand hall, now emptied of her entourage, stood as a silent witness to the consequences of her own actions. The echoes of Riley's vulnerability lingered, a stark reminder that even the seemingly invulnerable could be exposed, and that strength didn't always lie in cruelty, but sometimes in the courage to acknowledge one's own faults. As the last echoes of the departing crowd dissipate into distant murmurs, Nella stands alone in the grand hall, feeling the weight of her isolation pressing down upon her like a suffocating shroud. Her chest tightens with a sense of dread, a relentless reminder of her own inadequacy in the eyes of her ancestors. In the stillness that follows, slowly as the heads disperse, there are shadows that remain standing before her. Nella's gaze falls upon the four individuals who remain, their presence a stark contrast to the emptiness that surrounds her. Anger surges within her, a tempest of emotions seeking release, and she feels the familiar sting of bitter resentment clawing at her insides. With a flick of her wrist, Nella conjures a torrent of magic, the raw power crackling in the air around her. But as she directs her fury towards the unsuspecting quartet, Ethan responds with swift precision, erecting magical barriers to shield them from her onslaught. As the barriers deflect her magic, Nella's mind becomes a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. She thinks of Anne and Riley, the golden children, whose effortless mastery of their powers only serves to highlight her own shortcomings. She recalls the whispered conversations of her parents, their disappointed murmurs echoing in the recesses of her mind, a constant reminder of her failure to live up to their expectations. And then, amidst the chaos of her inner turmoil, Nella's thoughts turn to the history of the Thatchett bloodline, one she learnt about, a lineage steeped in ancient power and dark secrets. She remembers the tales of the coven that went into hiding, driven underground by the insatiable bloodlust of Malachi, the ancestor whose curse still haunts all families to this day. But it is the memory of the Crimson Witch, Riley and Anne's grandmother, that haunts Nella the most. She recalls the stories of how the witch had sealed the curse away, hiding the relic that contained its power from prying eyes. And yet, despite her supposed benevolence, Nella cannot help but question the witch's motives. Why did she not destroy the relic outright? Was it because she coveted its power for herself, or was she simply not strong enough to wield it? As these thoughts swirl within her, Nella's rage begins to ebb, replaced by a gnawing sense of uncertainty. In the faces of the four individuals before her, she sees reflections of her own doubts and fears, reminders of the burdens they all carry as heirs to a legacy of betrayal. That night, many had fought and died because the Crimson Witch had only sealed it, not destroyed it. Nella's emotions churned like a stormy sea as she paced back and forth, her frustration and insecurity bubbling to the surface. Ethan and Riley stood nearby, their concerned gazes fixed on her. "Why do you always defend him, Ethan? I thought you were smarter than that." Nella's voice hit him like a train with bitterness, her words laced with resentment. "He's not as perfect as you think he is." Ethan stepped forward, his expression gentle yet firm. "Nella, Riley's my friend. If you can't handle that, then maybe it's you who has the problem." But Nella's resolve hardened. "I don't care. I want to see how good he really is. Just him and me, Ethan. Let's see if he lives up to everyone's expectations as a gifted child." Ethan's brow furrowed as he looked at Riley, who shrugs, now very confused. Nella, you know Riley's still learning. He's still got so many classes to get through. I'm teaching him what he knows. It's not safe to duel like this. Maybe that's the point, Nella interjected sharply, her words dripping with hate. Maybe he should just die, Her sentence rang out in an echo, laced now with her inner realization. Horror dawned in Nella's eyes as she recoiled from her own words, her hands trembling at her sides. I didn't mean that, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. But before Nella could retract her words, Ethan extended his wand towards her, walking towards her face with a hint of malevolence in his narrowing eyes. She could feel his rage deep in her soul, and it was as though his eyes spoke to her, telling her everything that she had ignored for so long. Nella, that's enough. Ethan's voice was firm, his eyes reflecting a mix of disappointment and concern. We can be a team, but only if you'll allow it. If you just calm down, we can talk about it. Defeated, Nella's shoulders slumped as she reluctantly backed away, her anger fading into a sense of shame and regret. In that moment, she realized the true cost of her insecurities and the damage they could inflict upon those she cared about most. And in that moment of clarity, Nella realizes that her anger is not directed towards them, but towards the weight of expectations that has always threatened to crush her spirit. With a heavy sigh, she lowers her outstretched hand, allowing the magic to fade into nothingness. As Riley approaches Nella, his expression a mix of concern and empathy, she recoils instinctively, putting up her magical barrier, her heart racing with a tumult of conflicting emotions as her teary eyes dart around the room. In her mind, she knows she should welcome his comfort, but the walls she has built around herself seem impenetrable, even to him. When Riley reaches out to touch her through the barrier of rich blue and green hues swirling in a bubble round her body, Riley doesn't seem fazed by the spell as he looks at his hand through the spectral light. Nella's panic flares, and she lashes out with her magic, a reflexive response born of fear and frustration. But as her spell hurtles towards him, Riley reacts with lightning-fast reflexes, dodging out of the way, and kneels onto the floor, panting as he regains himself and slowly rises from the ground. Ethan, Lily, and Anne watched in bewilderment as Riley effortlessly bypassed Nella's protective charm, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the flicker of confusion that danced in his eyes. The trio exchanged puzzled glances, their whispers barely audible over the crackle of magic in the air. He's not affected by her aura. Lily, that's not normal. I've never seen it before. Ethan murmured to Lily, his voice tinged with disbelief. That only happens in ancient bloodlines, ones with a direct connection to the flow of magic I read this years ago. I think it's you two that Malachi has been after all along. Lily's eyes look towards Anne with sadness. She understands this means she could lose them if they had to face Malachi. Lily nodded, deep in thought. But how is that possible? Riley's only just arrived at the academy. It's unheard of for someone so new to possess such abilities. Anne chimed in, her voice tinged with concern. I think deep down we all knew this was coming. We need to protect him. If others find out about this, Riley could be in danger. Their movements are a blur of emotion and pain as they circle each other in the dimly lit hall. With each exchange, Nella's emotions threatened to overwhelm her, the weight of her burdens bearing down upon her like a suffocating weight. But amidst the chaos, there is a flicker of something else, something she cannot name. As Riley fights to protect her from her own magic, she catches glimpses of his unwavering determination, his steadfast resolve in the face of her turmoil. And in that moment, Nella feels a pang of something unfamiliar stirring within her, a spark of hope amidst the darkness that threatens to consume her. For perhaps, just perhaps, she is not as alone as she once believed. As their stares towards each other reach a fever pitch, Nella's defenses begin to crumble, her resolve weakening under the onslaught of Riley's unwavering support. Tears sting at the corners of her eyes as she struggles to contain the storm of emotions raging within her, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. And then, in a sudden moment of clarity, she sees herself reflected in Riley's eyes, sees the pain and confusion mirrored in his gaze. In that moment, she knows that he may not understand her pain, but he is willing to stand by her side nonetheless, offering her the strength she so desperately needs. With a choked sob, Nella finally lowers her defenses, the magical energy dissipating into the air around them. In the silence that follows, she collapses into Riley's arms, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. Meanwhile, Lily watches from the sidelines, her heart aching with a mixture of envy and longing. She sees the way Riley protects Nella, his fierce devotion shining like a beacon in the darkness, and she can't help but feel a pang of jealousy. But beneath the jealousy lies something deeper, something she can barely bring herself to admit. For in that moment, as she watches Riley and Nella embrace, she realizes that she wants more than just his protection. She wants him to see her and notice her, and she's realizing maybe he never will. Not in the way she wants. As Nella clings to Riley, her body still trembling from the emotional turmoil, a sense of clarity washes over her like a cleansing tide. In that moment of vulnerability, she realizes that her anger and resentment have only served to isolate her further, pushing away those who have stood by her side through thick and thin. With a deep breath, Nella regains herself, pushing aside the doubts and insecurities that have plagued her for so long. Perhaps, she thinks to herself, she could be the change that's needed. If only she chose to see the positives over the negatives, to embrace the bonds of friendship and family that have sustained her through the darkest of times. Turning to the four individuals who have remained steadfast by her side, Nella offers a tentative smile, a silent apology for the pain she has caused them. And as they exchange knowing glances and nods of understanding, she feels a flicker of hope ignites within her, a spark of possibility that maybe, just maybe, they can find a way forward together. She's amazed to see that smiles are returned. With renewed determination, Nella and her companions set off in pursuit of the professors through the aged corridors of the academy, their robes caught in flight as the air is charged by their movements as they run through the narrow passages, racing to catch up. The grandeur of the headmistress's office looms before them, a beacon of authority and power amidst the uncertainty that surrounds them. As they draw nearer, the figures of the professors come into view, their silhouettes framed against the soft glow of the sun as it sets. And then, just as they are about to disappear behind the closed door, in a sudden, reckless decision, Ethan's hand darts into his robes, fingers wrapping around the contours of his wand. His heart pounded in his chest as he hesitated for a brief moment, the consequences of his impulsive choice flashing before his mind's eye. But the gravity of his mission outweighed the risks. With a flick of his wrist, Ethan cast the Volterum Strike spell, sending a shooting star from the tip of his oak wand through the air as it crashed like thunder at the end, with a harrowing sparkle. The spell soared towards its target with a swift precision, striking the back of Professor Embervert with a resounding impact. The surrounding students fell into stunned silence as Professor Embervert whirled around, his expression a mixture of shock and anger. His wand extended, poised for retaliation, before recognition flickered across his features. It was a student, not a threat. "What in Etheria's name do you think you're doing, Thornweld?" Professor Embervert's voice boomed through the room, his tone laced with authority and reproach. "This is unacceptable behavior." Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of his actions settling heavily upon him. But he refused to falter. "I'm sorry, Professor, but we need to speak to the faculty immediately. It's urgent."